we're ready.
Okay, call the meeting to order for November 8th, 2018 for the Kingston Springs Regional Planning Commission. We'll have a roll call. Keith Allgood.
Present.
Donna Boggs, absent. Tony Campbell, absent. Gary Corlew.
Here.
Tom Cullen. Here. Tony Gross.
Here.
Brian McCain.
Here.
Mike Patnode here. Chuck Slater.
Here.
Okay, non-voting staff, Sharon Armstrong.
Present.
John Lawless.
Here.
And in for Jennifer No, Martha Brooke.
That's correct.
Okay, we do have a quorum. So you have the October 11th Planning Commission meeting minutes before you.
I move to approve and circulate it.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the minutes are approved. You have the Planning Commission agenda in front of you.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so the Planning Commission meeting agenda for today is approved. And we have 3 items of old business. Item A, the first item, rezone request, West Kingston Springs Road, map 96K, parcel 56, Indian Point Partners. This is the rezoning the lot from R2 to R3, acceptance of the flood overlay. So this is a standing item. Is there any comment on this other than that it's
There's no activity.
standing old business? Okay. The second item under old business is the proposed development of East Kingston Springs Road, map 96K, parcels 33 and 35, 36.01 McPherson site. Now, is this the one that we have some discussion on today?
We do.
And so, is it the gentleman here?
They are.
Okay.
Mr. McPherson is here, and Mr. Goff is here. Mr. Goff is the author of the geotech report for the site.
Okay. And so, is it just a presentation and update? Is that what we're doing?
It is indeed. We had a request from Mr. McPherson to proceed forward with a rezone application for the property. Given the amount of interaction over the last 3 years, we have suggested and to this planning commission and gave that opinion last month that there would be no further development until steps are taken to correct the deficiencies of the property. Having done that, Mr. McPherson wanted to have a conversation so that he could be clear on the steps that he needs to take in order to correct the deficiencies. And I believe he wanted to have a conversation with you to determine your interest or lack of interest, whichever way that goes, in the development proposal that he brought to you as a concept several months ago. And you have a copy of that
Right.
in front of you.
Right.
The request to rezone, as you know, in between the time that his first application was withdrawn and the second concept discussion was undertaken by the Planning Commission several months ago, a PUD overlay has been assigned to those lots.
Okay.
At the direction of the Planning Commission, there were 17 separate parcels that we laid a PUD overlay on, which somewhat changes the perimeter of this. We did so in response to not only Mr. McPherson's request for development, but a general overall plan for the city to give the Planning Commission more control and more flexibility on those parcels as they develop out because of their proximity to the interstate and to Loudon Hills Road and the school. So my understanding of the conversation tonight is that Mr. McPherson wants to seek a clear understanding of the steps that he needs to take in order to move forward.
To move forward, meaning?
Yes. He, as you remember from last month, presented a grading plan and excavation plan, which has been reviewed and approved. He needs to seek a permit to begin that work on the lot. That permit has not, as of this date, been filed.
Okay.
And that's all we have.
Okay, so a question I have, and I don't have the minutes in front of me from that meeting, but when Mr. McPherson discussed it with us before, the idea of a request to rezone, my memory is we said we would go in the direction of a PUD, but not a rezone. Is that right? Am I missing something?
The PUD discussion originated in 2016. We had a proposal at that point in front of the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission advised that they would wanted a PUD to be overlaid on that property.
Right.
At that point, Mr. McPherson withdrew his application,
Right.
so at this point, he has no formal application before the planning commission. At last month's meeting, we approved his grading and excavation plan in order to address the issues that are present on the
The
property.
standing issues on the property.
That is correct.
Okay.
As you know, we discuss that property almost every month.
Right.
So his request and his conversations with staff, John and I, were that he wanted to present a petition to rezone the property. My particular advice on that is that the rezone not be considered by this planning commission until some steps towards remediating the issues on the property are taken. We are
Okay.
now 4 years into this discussion.
Okay, so I just, I want to make sure I'm clear on something.
Yes, sir.
So in order to take the steps to fix what's wrong with the property, I got that. That's moving forward. Are we implying that if we fix those things that are outstanding, that are wrong with the property right now, are we implying that we're moving towards approving a rezone?
We are not.
Okay.
Those are completely separate issues.
Completely separate things, okay. So I just wanted to be clear that those are not connected, that fixing what's wrong with the property is not connected to an automatic expectation that we would consider or approve a rezone. Is that a true statement?
That is correct. My
Okay.
position is that until there is some progress.
We cannot consider moving forward with anything,
That's correct.
whether that is moving in the direction of a PUD or anything else. So I just wanted to be clear that that's not, to move forward with anything, it's a matter of fixing what's wrong. And that it's not connected to a certain course of action. I just wanted to be clear on that. Does that make sense to you, sir?
Yeah, I wanted to address the commission as possible.
It's sure, and absolutely want to make sure, I mean, we will, that's what you're here
Yeah.
for. But I wanted to be clear that, A doesn't imply B, that A just is fixing what's broken. In other words, the steps forward is fixing what's broken, right? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So anyway, at this point, please.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak, and if I'm a little hesitant at times, please bear with me, because it takes a while for me to sort of get my thoughts together. I'll be brief as possible. My name is Roy McPherson. I'm the owner of 3 parcels of property on East Kingston Springs Road. It's very apparent, I have a dilemma with the city. 18 months ago, I received a notice of violation from the city, and since then, I've been working with my engineer ever since then. You all know Mr. Lyons, Josh Lyons. He's been I think in the last 18 months or so, he's been before you 3 times, I believe, keeping you updated on exactly what we were doing to the property. His office is in Springfield. I've made many trips there. We spent a lot of what you see before you there on the drawings. We've spent a lot of time on this thing. What happened last time I was in here, in the city, it told me to come in here and ask for R3. It said because if we get R3, it's things you can do. It's a little more versatile. And I came in here, and the engineer that you all had at the time, they said they wanted to be R3 PUD. Tell you the truth, I didn't know what R3 PUD was. And I didn't actually turn it down that night or say no to it. I just didn't understand it. And so someone here said, whatever you put on R3 PUD, that's the way it has to be. You can't change the buildings around. And at the time, me and my engineer was not certain what we wanted. Ever since I received this, the NOV, first of all, I was asked to get a survey. I got with a company. They promised me they'd get it. They said they're far behind, like the surveyors or everybody I talked to, the surveyors are the worst for us. They're so far behind. 3 months after he promised he'd have it for me, he emailed me and said he can't do it. He just took on a subdivision, had to do that. So I scrambled. I found a young fella in Bonacqua, which I'm glad I ran into him. He's he just did an excellent job. Within a couple of months, he had the property completely surveyed. We put it on PDF and it was sent to the city. The city accepted it. Sometimes later, the city told me to asked me to hire a geotechnical engineer, which he's with me tonight, Mr. Gall, and to take and study the property, all the problems of the property, to find a remedy to all the property, to correct everything on there. He was backed up also within, I don't know how long, but maybe a couple of months later, he brought in machines. They bore holes all in the property, did all the studies, and excuse me just a minute. And after he made this study, and also correct everything. Everything's in the report. The report, and Miss Armstrong can tell you, it's quite lengthy. I think she's the one who studied it, and it was very much detail. I've tried to read it. I don't understand most of it, but after he finished it, and she studied it, I think it was a couple of issues on there. Miss Armstrong requested that he do some things. He had some issues about it. So he went back on the property, updated the report, and it was accepted by the city. And I also got an email from the city. As you will remember from receiving a notice of violation, I'm sorry, wrong thing. This is a part of an email. I believe the geotech report outlines step-by-step process of correcting existing violations. So it appears that the city has accepted it. If everything is on there, if it's done correctly, it will take care of all the problems on the property. Sometimes after that, I was asked to get my engineer, Mr. Lyons, who he and he's been a good advisor and a good friend of mine, to make an excavation and grading plan. After he completed that, and it took a while. This was back in the summer when they requested this, and he says, I'm way behind. He said, I can't do it until September. Well, it was the end of September before he had it, and I thought he did an excellent job. It was turned over to the city, and it seemed like the city accepted it and thought it was a good job also. And then they set up a meeting for last month, I believe it was, to present to you all, and that's when you, I guess, voted on giving me permission to get a grading permit. When I got the grading permit, I was glad to hear that. The first thing I did, I contacted Mr. David Hatcher with Pinnacle Bank. I've been friends with his a long time, and Pinnacle Bank, and they are the people that's agreed to finance the project. So far, I have spent $500,000 on the property, on this project, and for me to go further, I have to have financing. So I went to him, I presented Pinnacle Bank, everything I had, all the drawings, everything I had. They were impressed with it, and they said, go back to the city, and these are things that we need to loan you the money. All the 3 parcels, one is commercial, make it R4. The 2 parcels are R1, make those R4. take the 3 parcels, make 1 parcel. There's a road that was across the property. I don't know if it was ever authorized by the city or not, but it was to an old block house, and he says if it's ever authorized, it needs to be done away with it because it may haunt you later on. And he also requested that get permission to talk to the water company to get drawings for the horizontal drilling for to get water, sewer, and gas over there. Because I'm sure he's trying to protect himself here because he realizes it'll add value to the property when those things are done. I went back to after I did all that, what he requested, I went back to the city, and the city, I told them the things I needed, and they said no action can be taken until properties are in developable status. I asked for clarification. They told me the property has to be finished and ready to be built on. And I told them, I said, you know how much I've invested so far, and you know I cannot go any further unless I have finance. The project's dead. And so that's, and I have a copy of the notice of violation with them tonight, and it says if I don't do these things that I will be prosecuted. It doesn't say may, it says will. It's from your attorney, Jennifer No. And I got to thinking on this. I was wondering where no action can be taken. And there's another email that I got from the city. It says, as you remember from receiving the notice of violation letter, no action can be taken until it is returned to developable status. I've read this letter from the lawyer. It's not in there. I guess that's. I have two requests tonight. I think you all understand the predicament I'm in. It's if it's any way possible that we can make it work, I'm at your mercy on that. So if there's any relief that you think you could help me with, because I can't go forward any further, and I think I've showed good faith as much as I've worked with my engineer, showing that I'm dedicated to the project and I want to do it right, or I wouldn't have hired the engineers. They've all worked on it, and my engineer has told the city if it's done, if it's carried out, like in his report, the property will be stabilized and you can build on the property. My engineer and I, we strategically put the buildings exactly where most of those buildings are on limestone. There's only one building that's on its own field, and in his report he shows exactly how to correct that. So the only thing that concerns me, if it seemed like because I'm between a rock and a hard spot, I can't go forward. I don't know how to do it without financing. And then it says in the report that you will be prosecuted. And you know, imagine how that feels. But I'd like to, whatever you could do for me, I'd appreciate. The other thing is on the other thing about no action taken. I'd like some clarification on that if I possibly could. If you have any questions for me or my engineer, I'd be glad. Thank you for listening to
Well,
me.
before you sit down, you at one point you said, and I just need a little clarification on my end. You said you had basically 2 requests, but I didn't follow exactly what those 2 requests were.
Well, the first request is the main one, and the main one I'm here is relief. If it's possible, if it's any way around this, I don't, like I say, I still don't worry it. No action can be taken, and
Okay.
I don't. It's other people that are project. I don't think anybody going to do anything without zoning changes. If I went down there, because I told the city, I said I've spent $500,000, and what they're asking me now is going to go over $500,000. And so I'm in a catch-22 situation. And because I may have been naive, and my engineers may have been naive, because we was all thinking that we were working toward the thing that come the day that we'd be going before you all and asking for a zoning change. And then get the money, because they knew that I didn't have unlimited funds. I do have a certain amount of money, and I put it in this property. And so that's the situation. That was the one, is relief.
Okay.
And the second one was a clarification on this. You know, I've never understood exactly what the city has to profit by not trying to go along and me to get the loan. It's my understanding that even if I get the loan and if I get the place looking like a golf course, it still has to be inspected by the city and okayed before any buildings are put on this. I think I understand the water company controls all of this too. So,
Sir, as I'm listening to you, it almost sounds to me like the first thing you're asking for is clarification.
no, relief is the first one. If I get that, I don't need clarification.
Well, but it's relief from where you say you are and what your options are, I think is what you're saying, right? Here's where I am, here's what my options are. But I also heard you say, I'm not sure if this says this has to be done this way and this says no action. It sounded like you were asking for some explanation of how that fits together.
No,
You're not, okay?
no action. I don't understand that. It's okay if you say no action can take it. That is telling me the project's dead. It's what it's telling me. It's what it's telling Pinnacle Bank.
Yeah, so that sounds to me like you want to get that question answered, right?
That and but if you do the relief and say look, we'll go along with you, I don't need
That
that.
to me, that's kind of like jumping over things. It sounds like we got to be clear on where we are.
Mike, why don't we have
Yes.
Sharon identify what no action means?
Yeah, just
Yes,
describe
sir.
where we are, yeah.
The email that Mr. McPherson is referring to was a response to an email request to seek rezoning. And we explained to Mr. McPherson that the violation on the property has to be addressed before action can be taken on his rezone. He presented to this body a site plan for development and a request to rezone in his concept discussion with you. The site plan cannot be relevant because it includes an excavation and grading plan for the purposes of development. Until we get to that point, the property is not at developable status. So we can't proceed forward to grant the rezone, nor approval of a site plan that's based on a property that is not in compliance with grading standards, topography standards. So at the point, Mr. McPherson was advised to seek a permit for the grading and excavation in order to begin the process. He was also advised that as progress takes place and we can determine whether the property is stable and ready or proceeding towards that, that's an appropriate time to bring a request to rezone the property for a much higher density level, combine a plat, which was also brought forward but not approved, to combine the 3 lots, which are now, at this point, C2 commercial adjacent to West Kingston Springs Road, and the two in the rear are R1. They lie in an area where topography is a challenge on the rear of the property. During the process, over the course of doing a file autopsy, so to speak, over the past 4 years, Mr. McPherson was advised a number of times that what he was doing was hampering the development potential of his property. So that response, no action can be taken. We can't consider a plan for development with a site plan presented to us when the property does not meet the circumstances for development.
All right, so he was granted an excavation and grading permit. He was granted that permit?
He has not applied for it.
Oh, he hasn't applied for it, okay.
Well, I mean, I was granted to pick it up, but that's the reason why I had to get financing, is no need me to get a grading permit if what I'm going to do is take a dozer down there and first of all, I'm going to start paying him. And then I need financing to do that. But I've owned the property 3 years, not 4 years. And when I came in there the first time, my engineer and I, we did not know exactly what we wanted to do with the property. We didn't even know if we wanted to keep it commercial in the front. The other drawings that he even did a master drawing and brought to you all. But at this time, and much time has gone by, we've solidified in our minds exactly what we would like to do. But I know it's if you go down there and you take care of all the problems, you can do it all at the same time, you know, because like I say, the excavating company, I don't know how he's going to nitpick and take out, but it's my understanding the property has to be completely and is developable. Or if it's developable, that means a building can be built on it. In other words, it's finished. 2 detention ponds, grass matting on the all the drains, and it's a massive amount of whole ram is going to be busy down there for a long time, and why we don't do this all at one time and get it done and make it all something that Kingston Spring can be happy with. But
Yes, sir. The term developable status is a planning legal term. This property has been altered from its natural state, resulting in a violation. That violation exists of a life of its own, separate of any potential or plans to develop. It is a violation. It's much like getting a speeding ticket. That has to be resolved. Until the property is returned to a state that it can sustain development, we can't consider whether or not to put these apartment units on it, a parking lot on it. The conversation that Mr. McPherson had with you about boring under the road, that's a multiple agency question. The utility company is one entity. It's a state road, that's another entity. How do we give him permission to bore under the road when we don't know what the finished grade is going to be, because he has to furnish a plan for utilities that establishes where the lines will be run, at what point he'll enter under the road. So we're, as the chairman pointed out, kind of getting the cart in front of the horse. So as progress is made towards returning the property to a state of development, we could reconsider this. At this point, if a request for rezone was placed before you, my recommendation would be to deny it, because the property does not meet the circumstances of development as of that date. And this is a relatively intense request for development, you know, pretty challenging area.
How long has the property been unstabilized?
Pardon?
How long has the property been unstabilized?
Unstable?
Unstable, sorry.
Mr. McPherson, my understanding, Mr. McCain, is that Mr. McPherson first sought a grading permit in excess of 3 years ago.
It was right at 3 minutes. Yeah, I'm sorry, don't mean to interrupt.
There was a letter, there is a letter in the file from 2015 where the code officer asked him to stop with filling. There was some interaction with the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation with the installation of fill that compromised or was beginning to compromise the house next door. That was addressed. Then further activity continued on the lot. As you know, there was discussion about the 2 large mounds of dirt and the need to secure those and retain them. So after working with Mr. McPherson for a number of months, we required him to pull a geotechnical report so that we could understand the circumstances of the property, because the fill was not installed in the manner that fill normally is. He is correct in one regard. Normally the process is much that you come in with a set of plans and a request to rezone that includes a grading plan, a utility plan. All of those things are put together with your proposal for development. The distinction here is that there's a violation on the property because of the way it was filled. Does that help to clarify it all?
Okay.
For your,
It hasn't been taken care of to this point.
No, it's basically grading and compaction.
Okay.
Basically grading and compaction at all.
that is correct. There is, if I'm interpreting the geotechnical report, and I did seek the advice of an engineer, somewhat familiar with these particular topics, is that there needs to be a fair amount of excavation of the fill. One, we don't know what type of fill it is. Two, there was no compaction that was present done to a particular engineering standard that would sustain construction of buildings. So that excavation has to take place. It's a fairly straightforward process. You simply take out the things that you put in. You compact them in areas where you can, but as the geotechnical report points out, the compaction and quality of fill can change from foot to foot on the site because there was no monitoring, no plan when it was installed.
Stuff was just dumped in there. Right.
Could I,
And there's also construction debris which is not suitable for fill.
let me ask you, when I bought the property, was the property in developable status when I bought the property?
I have no way of knowing that.
I mean, am I the one who changed that?
Well, in a sense, you did to some extent because you brought fill in.
Very little fill. When I bought the property, it had 2 pyramids as high as you could stack them. It was down there. In
You're
most
talking about the dirt?
Yes, sir. In most of the field that is down there is from the dirt. The city allowed the people next door that built the storage building. They allowed them to push these huge mounts, and the city was well aware of it. And when I bought it, I mean, as high as you can see, there was 2 pyramids up there. I came to the city, and they first told me that I had to clean up the lot. I got Mr. James Parks that worked here. He and I worked together for months. It was on all 3 parcels. There were old tires. I mean, you can't imagine. I had 5 40-yard containers filled with tires, roofing, refrigerators. All of that was cleaned out, and it took a long time and a lot of money to do that. The city, when I started pushing the dirt, they gave me a permit, and the city went along with me. They knew exactly what I was doing, and that's the reason why the city told me to get R3, because when you get a certain thing, it's very versatile. You can do a lot of things with it. And the only problem I ever had with T-Deck, it was some sediment that went down on Eva Lee's. And as soon as it went down there, I went down there and talked to her personally. And as soon as that was done, I had it correct on my property, went down there, put in shot rock, and if you talk to anybody, talk to Eva Lee, she is very happy. We took in Joy, some of you may know him, works with Mike, I think of Mike's last name, Dozier.
Okay, so here's what I'm having trouble with.
Yes, sir.
When did you buy that property, Mr.
3 years ago.
Okay. So I'm having trouble following a timeline
Yes, sir.
because, so I'm just saying there's a bunch of stuff going around here, a lot of information. And so I would like to somehow be able to see the timeline of what happened. All these words, it's too much for me, but it sounds like you bought property. You may have bought property that was or was not in compliance at the time you bought it, but you bought it.
Yes.
Then other things were done to the property. It may have been to remediate some things that were there when you bought it, or may have been added since you bought it. But you, anyway, there's a timeline where you bought it. I'm not sure if you had investigated everything you bought and knew what was there and knew what the status of it was in terms of it being developable, and then what steps you took, and then how we got to today with where it is. But we do know where it is. Ms. Armstrong described where we're at in terms of the property not being developable and what the issues are. But I'm having trouble following that timeline of how you got from point A to point B. And I don't know what the status of it was when you bought it, or what you knew about it, or I don't know that situation. But that doesn't change what the status is. So I don't know where we're at. I mean, there's a timeline there, and I can see where we're talking about today, and I can see that you feel you're stuck in terms of money that you've put in and what you need to go forward.
The last 18 months, since I got this notice of violation, we have worked with the city, everyone, and Mr. Lawless, and both of them. We've had meetings here. My engineer has talked to him, talked to you all. We've kept everybody up to date. We were thinking all along we were doing the right thing. That doesn't mean that we were, but our intentions and everything were honorable. And it's no nicer person than Mr. Lyons. And everything was working on, we could get a zoning change for that we could finish the project. And we thought we did all of this. And then when I went back to, after I talked to Pinnacle Bank, and I went back to the city, and they told me about this clause, or whatever you may call it, no action taken, I was dumbfounded. I said, it's destroying what we've started. I said, I'm not saying mistakes were made. What mistakes were made, anything I've done on that property, the city was there 2 or 3 times a week. Everything that was done was condoned by the city.
Yeah.
When I came here and asked for R3, it was the city told me to ask for R3.
Okay. So,
Sharon, could you share maybe a little bit, because there have been some instances of stop work orders that happened along the way with this, and I believe that they weren't necessarily complied with in every situation. Could you provide a little bit of clarification?
That was concerned about the settlement going down there. That was TDEC.
okay, well, why don't we let Ms. Armstrong catch us up here on.
I have reviewed the entire file beginning way back to 2015. Mr. McPherson secured a grading permit. The grading permit has bounds and limits. With a grading permit, if your intent is to install fill on a property, that intent is declared when you file for a grading permit. As far as I can determine, no grading or excavation plan was ever presented to the Planning Commission for approval back in 2015. At two junctures within the file, I can see where a stop work was issued in excess of the TDAC interaction. Those were issued by the city. One was issued by Mr. Schubert, and one was issued by Aaron at a later date. In answering some of the questions that are surfaced as far as the timeline, given what Mr. McPherson presented to the Planning Commission several years ago, he was advised that it would only fall within an R3 zone because of the density of what he wanted to build. As you know, R1 only allows single-family houses. R2 allows duplexes. R3 was the only zone that would give the density that he required. When he brought that to the Planning Commission, the Planning Commission requested that he accept a PUD, so there would be some control. At that point, there was a large amount of fill on the property that had not been stabilized. The juncture that we're at right now, while I understand Mr. McPherson's conundrum with financing in the bank, the installation of the fill was done by Mr. McPherson largely. If there was fill on the property when he bought it, he was aware that it was there. We have worked with him to, one, determine as best we can through engineering what's on the property. He complied with that request, furnished the report. The point we're at with this project is we need to see some forward movement to resolve the violation. It exists on its own, regardless of any request to develop. That violation exists. No action can be taken is regulated by your subdivision regulations. Your subdivision regulations dictate that if there is an issue on the property, you cannot consider a plan for development. It would require you to waive the regulation as a body. Once you open that door with any applicant, that door is open for every applicant. So in order to resolve the issue, he has a plan given to him in the geotech report by the engineer. The city is perfectly amenable to issuing a grading and excavation permit to accomplish that goal. Whether or not the property was at a developable status when he bought it, I don't know. We didn't have any applications for development on that property. So there's no record within the city of that. That was a owner-to-owner transfer of property. So there was nothing here that would advise that.
What is the nature of the violation, per se? Is it just...
The violation is several things. One, the lot became overgrown, covered with weeds. Second, there were two towering stacks of dirt that were slowly eroding through rain and lateral movement that were creating issues for the stream base downhill. The third is that the soil that was installed in the field was never compacted properly, and the type of fill that exists on the property contains construction debris, some of it wood, which degrades over time and does not form a stable base for development.
So what we're recommending now, we give him the grading and the compaction and whatever he needs to do to put it in a position that's satisfactory to the Planning Commission and satisfactory for future building.
Yes.
That has to be done before we go forward,
Yes.
basically.
There's a requirement to clear the violation, and once the violation is cleared, then we have a...
Then we can consider the
some-
changes.
there's a place to start from.
And you do have some latitude within the regulations if forward progress is made. If there is some movement towards returning the property to a stable condition, that you can then entertain the rezone request for the density. At that point, the requirements for Mr. McPherson will not lessen, they'll deepen. He'll be required to produce utility studies and plans. He'll be required to get permission letters from TDOT and from TDAC. It's my understanding that he will also be required to furnish to us financial ability. He will have to have a bond. That will not lessen his requirements. It will further them.
And does this density of development require a traffic study or not?
It absolutely requires, anything that borders the major quarters as they're laid out on the thoroughfare plan require a traffic study. Your subdivision regulations, when you divide property, if you remember from the Thornton's project, there was a lot of discussion about traffic studies.
Right.
If you divide or combine property, in this particular case, it's a combination of 3 lots. You're increasing the lot size of parcels if you combine these 3 pieces of property. A traffic study for in our subdivision regulations are always required, because you have to determine the impact in the major thoroughfares for the traffic movement.
So,
Did he have to get a general permit as part of this?
I'm sorry,
Did he have to get a TDEC general permit as part of it as well?
he did get a TDEC permit. In conversation with TDEC, and I've had multiple conversations with them trying, as the commission is, to understand the history of this property and the interaction on it. My understanding is that when the permit was originally secured from TDEC with the SWIP plan, it was not presented as a project for, it was presented as a project for grading and the installation of level fill. That in and of itself has worked its way through after a number of conversations with TDEC. The other concern that I have for the property is that at some point, given the number of blue line streams that exist on this property, there will have to be, wherever the site plan lands, he'll have to secure an ARAP permit. They're not the easiest things in the world. An ARAP, to give you some context, the NPDES is dry, it's land. ARAP is water. You know, anything that you do that disturbs the water or has the potential to output into the water requires a different set of permit. Then there's the permit that's required from TDOT in order to bore under the road, and that is a somewhat complicated process.
For what? What purpose?
Water.
The
Water
water
lies
has to
on
come
the
out,
other
it's
side.
all
of
on
the
the
road.
other side.
Gas, water, sewer.
There's not water on that side of the road
No.
at the light?
It has to come across the road. They did it for the storage facility.
So, in entertaining that question, to reiterate, we can't say, sure, go get a permit and bore under the road until we know what level he's going under the road, which brings us right back to the grading plan.
Okay, it seems like things have changed tonight. She told me before that it had to be completely done, where buildings could be built on it. Now, Ms. Armstrong is saying that I do partial. This is the first I've heard of this. And if I do partial, what is partial?
well, I think what I heard from Ms. Armstrong said, there is a provision if forward progress is made.
It
that
is.
Can
and
be used.
It is. There is some latitude within the subdivision regulation that if it makes enough progress, that you can determine that it will be completed and that it will again be returned to a buildable status. And that's a judgment call that has to be made based on the grading plan as an as-built, not as a proposed build. And it would require substantial progress in order for you to make that determination and waiver that he would be at probably 90 to 95% completed.
When he's presented that to you, and it's, in your opinion, it's satisfactory, the grading?
The grading plan.
Yeah.
We
It's a
entertained the
geotech
grading
plan.
and excavation plan last month. That grading and excavation plan is predicated on the geotechnical report and is tied to that. And it does meet my standards, it meets the city standards. We approved his grading and excavation plan at the last meeting.
When I first bought the property, the city approved of what I was doing. They were down there 2 or 3 times. It may not have been in writing, but they were there. James Parks, and it was another fellow, they were there. 18 months ago, when I tried to correct everything, never once was I ever told, now you do all this work, you spend all this money with all these engineers, all these surveyors, but we're not going to give you a zoning change. We will stop it right there. If you're out of money, so be it. And that's exactly how the city's done, and that's the situation that I'm in. And they're saying, do it, or we will sue you, and
Well, with the current fill that you had there, were you following any type of plan, or were you just filling it?
we had a plan.
You had a plan, an approved plan?
Every time we pushed the
You had a
pyramid.
grading plan that was
But did we have an
approved.
approved grading
Right.
permit at
Right.
that time?
Yeah, I had a grading permit. I couldn't have had a dozer done it without a grading permit.
What's that, Tony?
I believe we didn't have an approved plan, correct? We had.
There is not
No.
in the file an approved grading plan. There is not a permit for the installation of fill. I think that, and I have no way of knowing what he's alluding to with conversations on the lot, there's nothing in the file.
So you don't have an approved grading plan approved by the city in your hands that you were using?
You're talking about then?
I'm not,
Right.
I'm not hearing
To
that
get
there
you to the
was.
point that you are right now.
Yeah. you
Okay,
were
when I
conducting the grading-
first had it, they had a drawing from these are old drawings, and this is the drawings that I presented to you all 2 years ago. 2 years ago this month.
Yes, sir, but what I'm asking is, what I'm hearing is there was no approved grading permit when that work
3
was
years
being
ago.
done. That you did not have an approved
Yeah,
grading
when
permit.
you started your fill.
When you
Yeah.
started your fill. That you did not have in hand an approved grading permit. You did not have a document.
A grave, yes, it was about this big as a license plate,
Chairman, I think he.
and I had it on the
Permit,
property.
Not
Just
no
not
plan.
the
Approved
plan.
Not the plan.
He was
Okay.
issued a permit, but a plan was not.
And the city approved everything verbally. They were on the property 2 or 3 times a week, knowing exactly what I was doing. And if I was wrong, the city was wrong. And in looking back on it, when I first got it, I was wrong. But the city needs to say, we were wrong also. We should never told you to be R3. We should have never approved you to do the things you did. But now we're here, and with the city, it's an eyesore down there, and the only game in town is me, and I'm not a young man. And if something happens to me, you have to deal with my children, and that would be instant karma. Because they know nothing about real estate or building or anything. And I'm ready to tackle the job, but I have to have financing to do it. And that's the bottom line where I'm coming from. And I understand what she's saying too.
The bank won't give you the money before that permit is satisfied, the grading permit. It has to be done before they'll give you the money.
I believe the bank won't give them the money before the zoning is satisfied.
Zoning change?
Well, we won't even consider a zone change. You know, when you first came in here, you wanted R3, I think, and we suggested you
No,
come
the
back
city
as an
wanted
R3 PUD.
The city wanted R3.
All we're
I think
saying,
there's
when
a
you came
difference
to the
between the city
commission,
wanting and the city saying what is required for the plan, right?
R3 PUD only came up the last night I was here, and the engineer had said R3 PUD. And first time I heard it, I didn't even know what PUD was. The only thing I knew about PUD was in Nashville about when they started the zero lot lines 40 years ago. That's the only thing I knew about it. And when it was presented here, I didn't turn it down. I didn't know what you're talking about. I had to study with it. I've talked to engineers. I understand it now. And the way I understand it is beneficial to me and beneficial to the city.
But I mean, the purpose of this board is not to want anything. The purpose of the city is not to necessarily want anything. I think that when they said, when R3 was recommended, that's what your development would fit in. What you were talking about would fit into an R3. I don't understand when you say that's what the city wanted. I don't think that there was a want from
The city planner told me to come here. They had a representative with me that night, and they said, ask for R3. This is what you want.
So that's what.
And so I was
what
going
you
along
needed.
with what the city says.
that was
And-
your recommendation that it were an R3. When we came back to you and said, we'll give you an R3 PUD contingent.
Correct.
But you didn't know what a PUD was, and it's fine that evening, but 2 weeks later, we got a letter from you or from your engineer saying that wasn't satisfactory, you had to have an R3 period, if I remember correctly.
That's my recollection, because I was actually.
I bet you can't
as
find that
attorney for
letter,
the commission during that period of time.
because there was no letter ever written like that. We never formally said we do not want R3 PUD. Never. And if there is one, it'd be a big
Maybe it was a
surprise.
verbal conversation, but I remember distinctly that the next meeting after you were here, it was my understanding that you had, that your engineer or somebody had strongly recommended that you not accept the PUD designation.
No.
You wanted an
No.
R3.
He was I was here by myself that night. And when he said R3 PUD, I had no idea what they were talking about.
So we'll need to have-
We have a record of what happened, I recall, but it is in the minutes,
Yeah.
so we can review the minutes for that purpose.
So-
It may be-
But if you have a letter saying I turned it down,
Well-
it won't be signed by me.
Yeah, right
We
now,
have the minutes of the meetings, so.
I know, but I'm talking about the
so I'm
letter.
going to ask Ms. Armstrong to go ahead.
Thank you. In reviewing the minutes of the meeting, Mr. McPherson's review from the planning entity at that time was forwarded with the packet for that evening. Mr. McPherson and the gentleman who accompanied him expressed an interest in a multi-building, multi-unit apartment complex. He was advised at that time that the only zoning that would tolerate that was R3. In presenting that to the planning commission had concerns, one, about the stability of the property, because that surfaces in the minutes as well. Two, traffic and a number of other things were expressed in the meeting, show up in the minutes. And they told him that the only way they would even consider the zoning request was with a PUD overlay to get flexibility and control. One, because the topography on the property is very difficult to locate buildings. Two, the installation of fill makes it very difficult to stabilize the ground. At that point, Mr. McPherson withdrew his proposal for development.
I did not withdraw.
Yes, you did, sir.
Yes,
So
sir.
I'm going to have to disagree with you.
Sir, hey, right now, you don't have the floor. Ms. Armstrong's walking through the timeline for us.
The record reflects that the applicant withdrew. That is reflected not only on the planning commission application, but also within the minutes of the record. And I have not reviewed the audio recording, but I could.
There's a copy of the minutes here if you'd like.
Copy of the minutes are available to anyone who wants to look at them tonight. At this juncture, and I want to clarify something that Mr. McPherson said, your ability to waive the restriction in subdivision regulations is very, very limited because there is a violation sitting on the property. We're not starting with a fresh piece of ground for development purposes.
Right.
We have advised Mr. McPherson that if he is determined to submit an application to request an R3 zone, there is no method to prevent that application from coming forward. What we advised him to do was seek direction from the Planning Commission to correct the deficiencies on the ground. If he files a request for rezone, you have no choice under the regulations but to deny it. Then he is hamstrung for 12 months. He can't bring another petition back. The regulations prohibit him from returning with his rezone request. So regardless of the discussion in the room, the staff has taken pain and time to advise him to proceed in the most proficient way to preserve the use of his property, because we are not unconcerned with that from his end. The violation is of his own making. He was handed a grading permit. He was ordered to stop on more than one occasion, and he did not. I asked him to stop in a phone call. You are rendering your property undevelopable with this activity. Please stop. He's at a point now, and it's taken a year to get here, where we have approved his ability to move forward to take care of that issue. And that's where we are today. We can't take any other action.
So that's where we are.
So irregardless of how we got here exactly, you have a piece of property that you purchased that's undevelopable at the moment and isn't zoned for how you want to use it. So we have to get to where it's developable before we can get to rezoning it. And I understand your, like I said, conundrum with the financing, but our hands are just as tight as yours are.
I understand, I appreciate y'all letting me know.
So the step forward was, there is an approved grading and excavation plan that is integrated with the geotech plant report,
That's correct.
and that
Is all satisfactory,
and
right?
that covers the violations,
That's correct.
and that is the next step before anything can move forward.
That's correct. His
Beyond
next
that.
step is to file an application for a permit to begin that work.
So at this point, there's no action that we need to take tonight to do anything.
No, sir.
There is no action.
So that's where it stands.
Thanks, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Is it possible to get a summary of the actions that he needs to do to move forward in writing?
Is that not
Is
the
that
grading, I mean, is that not the
the
plan,
geotechnical?
the grading plan? Is that not would those
It
not be
is.
the actions?
It is, and we have provided Mr. McPherson with the permit application document. We have provided him with the steps moving forward, but we will be happy to do so again.
And I wasn't specifically talking, the items that you mentioned as far as to make the project, the site stabilized, you mentioned 5 or 6 specific items. Can that be delineated in writing?
Does he have a copy of the violation?
He does.
Okay.
He has a copy of the violation letter, and he has a copy of the permit application. He has the grading plan, and he has the geotech report, and he has a SWIP plan. All of those inform his next steps, but I'll be happy to elucidate all of those in writing again, as a step by step by step.
Okay,
Very good.
all right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. So, old business, Thornton's project. There's a project extension request for the Living Hills Road Thornton's project.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the board is aware, during the months of October, November, and December of 2017, we went through all of the processes for the Thornton's project to be approved, including landscape lighting, site plan, grading plans, utility plan, all of the work, the body of work. The last lighting plan, and that was at the December 14th, 2017 meeting where their lighting plan was approved after we adjourned to the design review committee and then returned back. The regulations indicate that a site plan, once approved, must have a construction start within a year of its approval. So that's the reason for the extension request tonight. The site plan will fall dead as of this date. Not this particular day, but within this month, in the month of December. December the 14th is the date that we established because we were still in the process of reviewing submissions. So it will drop dead as of December 14th without an extension. It's within your latitude to extend that by a period of 6 months at a time if that is your desire to do so. With the understanding that nothing changes, it stays exactly as it was approved, unless something is received asking for a change.
I move that we grant the extension for 6 months.
Okay, do we have a second on that? Or not? Do we have additional questions?
So we want to move forward without hearing anything, this is just a formality?
Well,
to
and
give them the
technically, in
opportunity?
order to have discussion, you should have a motion and a
Motion on the
second.
floor, and then we have any discussion. So
I'll second it for discussion.
Okay?
Okay,
So-
now we can discuss it.
Let's discuss.
So are there,
Is the city having any second thoughts at all about this project? Is this the best use of that property in view of what's happened around town in the last year? And I assume Thornton's has delayed this for whatever reasons, but you could have gone through with this 6 months ago or more, 10 months ago.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to let you know where we stand.
You been sold yet?
Thornton's? No.
Okay.
I obviously don't know all the details with that, but it's no secret that there was articles in the paper about Thornton's being up for sale. From all I know, they've moved beyond that because all the projects that they had, at least in Middle Tennessee, they're now taking them off the shelf and ready to build them. So they're moving full steam ahead. I've got 2 other sites in Nashville that they're ready to start construction on. Their request letter to John was only for 1 month. They're ready to go. They're planning to close between December 15th and December 31st, which is only slightly after the extension or the 1 year mark. So that's the reason we're here tonight. The plan would be to be able to pull the permit in January.
okay? So you're just asking for 1 month. We can do up to 6 months, right?
Well, we have to do in six
In 6 months increments?
increments.
And does
so
it
would
matter?
My advice would be to consider a term longer than a month if it's your desire to extend this, simply because with holidays coming up,
Don't want to do it
it's
again.
my understanding that the attorney that's working on the acquisition is a little bit overwhelmed at this point with work.
That doesn't
People
surprise me.
tend to behave differently around the holidays than they do at other times of the year. So you have within your latitude 6 month period. My advice would be to go to that 6 month period because you never know what tomorrow brings.
We would not
If
object.
it's your desire to.
Not object to that?
No.
Okay?
So what's the process if we don't grant this? Start all over?
The process, if you do not extend this, is that the entire project falls dead and it would have to be resubmitted and revetted
entirety.
and reviewed and reapproved.
And as much time as we spent on this project, I would not like to do that again.
They didn't get it right this time.
Well, they got it right. They've done everything we've asked for. We can't complain about that.
And nothing has changed.
Fantastic.
Same plan as approved.
I call the motion.
So are there any other questions or concerns that you need answered about this?
I didn't hear an answer to my question.
Your question was there,
Does
has
those
something
members
changed?
who live in the city think this is the best use of that property?
Well, how
After
do
a
you
year of considering.
How do you determine what is the best use for the property?
You may want to put a Marriott hotel on that site.
Yeah, chances of that happening are big, and, yeah, right. I can't see that, Right now, we got property that is underutilized, and we've got a project that's gonna bring in more sales tax revenue for sure. I can't see the bad part of it.
Yeah, I don't, Tom,
I'm just
personally,
asking
yeah.
the question, that's all.
Right.
Well,
I was asked the other night if this was,
Mhm.
I mean, and we made it to this point and everything like this, but I mean, just to get to Tom's point, I mean, there are still obviously the existing issues with the state of our interstate ramps there, and I think, not that I'm necessarily opposed to it, but I mean, there obviously are issues. I mean, it's not worth not mention. Obviously, we should mention them, I suppose. But
Can we get?
it's a fair question. It's a good question.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we get what?
Stuckies.
Back up there?
Yeah, I remember when Stuckies were there.
Okay, Ms. Armstrong, you had something?
As an observation from an old planner, while I understand the question, and I understand, I believe, the intent behind the question and the reason why you're asking, it should be, as a matter of course, the first question that we ask anytime somebody comes to us with a project. However, given what's existing in that area. And given that you have done HUD overlays to other vacant parcels, and given where we stand as a planning body in Kingston Springs, that ship probably should have been asked that question about 15 years ago. We are taking steps to correct that, which leads me to another statement, not necessarily something that you have to do. But I would really like to advise this planning commission to add to its January agenda a discussion to do a community-wide planning initiative so that we are not asking these questions parcel by parcel, but we're looking at the city, including the growth area, which is under pressure, holistically, and from a distance of maybe 30 years out rather than 15 minutes in. So I would like to request that that be added to the agenda for January as a discussion item. And then hopefully that will cross-pollinate to the commission at a later date.
I think that's, I guess we do have a motion and a second on the floor, but that's excellent.
So,
I called the motion.
yep, and the motion's been seconded. So this is on the Thornton's extension for 6 months.
So if we don't grant it, they're gonna come do it again?
We're gonna do, yeah. All right, so regarding the motion to extend the Thorntons for 6 months of project, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously. All right. So in, Ms. Armstrong, you asked about adding an agenda item, which was to present the idea of the community-wide overlay.
That's correct.
Okay, so do we need a motion to add that to the agenda?
I think that,
Okay.
let's just add it to the agenda
Okay.
at your request.
All right.
It would be for January. Are we gonna have, has anything been submitted for a December meeting?
Nothing has been submitted for December.
So we should be clear in December anyway. And then piggybacking on that, maybe in the January commission meeting, we can talk about that. That should also be something where
Okay.
Sharon could come in and also speak to them.
Okay. So we want to have Gary Corlew make a couple comments, but before I do, is there any other business for the planning commission? Okay, so Gary, the floor is yours.
Well, I guess everybody, most people know, but this will be my last night on the planning commission. I do have a commission meeting left next week. I'm not sure how long I've been on the planning commission, but 28 years for the city commission, and so I'm going to sit in my chair a little bit more now. So, but anyway, I just want to tell everybody I appreciate you, and I've enjoyed being on the planning commission. Met a lot of different people, and smart people, and some dumb people. But anyway, I've enjoyed it, and it's been fun. And anyway, we've got next Thursday, so that'll be my last commission meeting.
Well, from my standpoint, Gary, I worked with you on the city commission and on the planning commission, and it's been a pleasure working with you. I can remember when we first started out, the hell that we went through. So I really appreciate your years of service.
We've had a lot of it. But it's still been fun, and as far as the planning commission and the city commission, I'm proud of what we have done.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody our parks and our, it's second to any city our size. It's not second to any of them. And and I'm real proud of our sign ordinance. Some people, some commissioners wanted to change that back once or twice, and which I think that's one of the best things we've done was our sign ordinance, and we've kept our roads up fairly as good as anybody else does, and we've got parks, and we've got a place to go down and rent and have parties or whatever, and I just think that nobody's, I mean, our planning commission has done a great job, you know, and our city commission. And so that's about all I got to say.
Well, I know a lot of people know a whole lot about what you've done, Gary. I remember moving here in '95, and you and Trina were in the middle of everything happening in this town. And I remember you mowing a walking path around the baseball park so people had a walking path, and you were a very action-oriented guy focused on this city. So
Yeah,
my little part of what I know about you is very thankful.
Well, I appreciate it, but I started out, when I started on the commission, I was actually coaching Little League ball too. So we started out, and we done the dugouts, and then we had a low spot out in the right field, and we dug a trench about 20 foot wide all the way around the 2/3 of the field and filled it with rock to stop that water from coming off the hill. And then our next project was a football come, and we got volunteers. You know, we had plenty of volunteers at Junior Adams, and we had a lot of help from Vaden Northcutt, and he furnished a lot. Mike Johnson, who was a builder, and we got a bulldozer, and we bulldozed a football field. It had the turf was at least that deep. And it was a job really to make that football field. And then we built where the announcers stay.
Broadcast booth.
Yeah, a booth, and then the next thing we did, we built a concession stand, and we had solicited help, and it was all paid for. The city didn't have to pay for it, and along the same time, I invited Lori Cooper to schedule would she schedule. I knew her real well, and on job she worked at the Racket Club out on Highway 100. And I knew she was a great organizer, and I said, I want you to just take care of scheduling our baseball field for us, and the lights, when to turn on the lights, and you can. And I said it won't be a very hard job, you know. And she's fussed at me for how many years that's been, like it was a big job. But she, and then she got, made her a volunteer park commissioner. I mean, I didn't make her. We just decided she was the volunteer park commissioner, and then Lori got into when it come time to Miss Beck retiring. I said, I said we need to put Lori Cooper's name in the hat. I said she is the best organizer I've ever been around. I mean, she knows how to organize, and so we got she got her name put in the hat, and it wasn't long till she was town city manager. So,
well, didn't she organize our spring fling thing?
Yes, we done that.
Yeah.
She was city manager then.
What was her name?
Yeah,
I thought she did that prior.
No, she was city manager. We had the 2 spring flings. That's something else we had, and we had a hole-in-one tournament. We had a duck race. We had all kinds of things to raise money for just the park. And the one thing I never could understand was with Debbie, she'd, I'd get, they say, I don't remember the budget. It wasn't a whole lot budget for the park, maybe $3,000 or $4,000, and that's to take care of the field and everything else. And which I did all that. I'd use a city tractor and mow and do everything else to the field, and aerate and spread dirt and plant grass, plant trees. We planted 20 some odd trees down. Most of them are still down there. And but anyway, we started. We had a duck race, and first time, I guess, we gambled in Tennessee, and so we had that duck race. But anyway, I had something else I was going to say, but I forgot what it was. but anyway, we've stayed we've stayed on with my thing has been parks more than anything. I wasn't very good at the budget. I just sit back and listen, and we've always had somebody to take care of the budget. And Debbie is, everybody knows what kind of job she's done, and we never read, never, and so that to me speaks for itself. So. But anyway, what I was going to say, what I couldn't, I know what I was going to say. I couldn't understand the Debbie that gave us that $4,000, and then if I didn't spend it all, say I only spent $2,000, the parks only spent $2,000. I said, now, when we get to the next budget, she said, we'll have to start over. And I said, well, I want that $2,000 left. And she said, no, you can't do that. And I wanted to keep the money for the next year too. She said, we didn't spend it. We just have to get a new budget.
So we made sure we spent it, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Gary.
If I could add, Mr. Chairman, that we're going to celebrate Gary's.
There it is.
We're going to celebrate Gary's dedication to the town of Kingston Springs next Thursday night, so everyone's welcome to attend.
Okay.
Standing room only, I think, is what it's going to be.
Where, John?
Here,
Right here.
after the commissioners meeting.
Okay. Okay.
That actually goes back. Goes back to John.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good, Tony. All right. So, we got a motion to adjourn?
Move.
Second. Okay.